Hey, welcome to History Happy Hour, a special series from History Uncovered.
It's the end of May 2023, and we've handpicked a few of our favorite history stories from this month. Today, we'll be talking about
the 98-year-old Frenchman who revealed the secret massacre of German POWs during World War II.
The 7,000-year-old tomb discovered by archaeologists in Oman.
How an Italian historian claims to have identified a bridge in the Mona Lisa.
The Stone Age dagger discovered by an 8-year-old in Norway.
Why severed hands may have been seen as spoils of war in ancient Egypt.
As well as a number of historical anniversaries, including the first reported Loch Ness Monster sighting, the opening of the Brooklyn Bridge, and the first men to scale Mount Everest. I'm All It's Interesting staff writer Kalina Fraga.
And I'm All It's Interesting staff writer Austin Harvey. And welcome to History Happy Hour.
Let's dig into some of our news stories from the past month. The first one is not super happy, I suppose, but it is interesting.
Yeah, that's how a lot of it goes when we do this. We're like, yeah, welcome to History Happy Hour. Here's some tragedy. Your monthly dose of tragedy.
Monthly dose of tragedy. Buckle in. Yeah, this is about this guy in France who's 98. His name is Edmond Brevet, and he has revealed that during World War II, when he was 18, he and other French members of the French resistance executed a bunch of POWs and then never spoke about it for the next 75 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it makes you think like how many other things are like that. And
yeah, just things that went unspoken for so long.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like, had he not said anything, it just would have stayed that way.
Right. And that's why he spoke, because he's 98 and everyone else has died. He's the last witness.
Right.
So he first talked about it in 2019 at like a veterans meeting, and then nothing really happened because COVID hit and people got distracted. But then he came forward recently and spoke to the media and was like, this is the story. This is what happened. And this is where like they're buried. And one of the interesting things was that there was like a dig at the site in the 60s and they found bodies. And then for like reasons unknown, the dig like stopped and was sort of like hushed up a little. But now they're going to return to the site and look again.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was 48 people and they only found 11 in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so weird. That's I can't imagine what would have like compelled them to stop looking for them.
Yeah, I imagine in the 60s, some of the tension between Germany and France might have still been pretty fresh.
Right.
So maybe that wasn't something they wanted to engage with at the time, or maybe it never passed. Like,
poke the bear.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unclear if this passed like beyond the local level, this discovery. It was very, very, very murky. So I don't know. But they're on better terms now, and now they're going to work together to try to find these bodies and bring them home. So,
well, that's good. At least that's something.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess our next story also has to do with bodies, but sort of like in a different way.
Yeah, it's far enough back that like it kind of stops being sad.
Although we don't know. I mean, it seems this tomb in Oman that's 7,000 years old. It seems these people were laid to rest and not like massacred, but
right, yeah,
it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It's a Neolithic gravesite, so it's when you said 7,000 years old, so yeah, it dates back to 5,000 to 4,600 BCE.
That's crazy.
They said it had at least several dozen people inside of it, all like specifically arranged with their heads towards the outer edges of it.
Yeah, that's wild. I think
it's really unique for the area too.
Yeah, they haven't found something like this before. They found it from satellite images, which I think is interesting. Just like looking at the desert, and they're like, "There's something there. Let's go check it out." Yeah, they also found nearby engravings of like animals and some old script, which they haven't interpreted yet. But it's also, I don't know. It's this idea that people lived that long ago and had these societies and stuff is really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm always so interested because obviously there was no like written word that passed down. So a lot of when they find stuff like this, it's up to so much interpretation of like, why were they buried in such and such a manner? Or what does this marking indicate? Mm-hmm. And you can kind of start to piece together like an idea of what these people's lives were like, but it's all speculation. Like we'll never really know.
Yeah, it's lost to time, most of it.
Yeah, but I think it's it's so cool to like hypothesize and to like every time, because we talk about like these sorts of discoveries a lot, like, whoa, this really old thing was found somewhere. Mm-hmm. But every time it happens, it sort of paints a wider and wider picture of life in like prehistoric times.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so interesting too, like how people on polar opposite ends of the world still had like similar customs a lot of the time, despite the fact that they would have never interacted with each other.
Yeah, it is interesting. Each discovery gets you a bit closer. Although sometimes it just kind of repaints what you thought you knew, and then
right.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool.
Speaking of repainting,
good one.
Thank you.
Yeah, this historian in Italy has claimed that he's identified the bridge in the Mona Lisa, which has been identified or like guessed about before, about where it is. But he took a look at it, and his idea is that it's this bridge that's sort of like in ruins now. But the one arch that's there, if you like copied it 3 times, it'd be 4 arches, and that's what appears in the painting. And the other bridges that have said that they're the bridge have more arches. So that seems like maybe more likely.
I see. Yeah. I'm looking at the pictures now.
Yeah.
I totally can see that. Yeah.
It's been documented that Da Vinci like traveled in this area. There's also cliffs by the bridge that he says are the same as the cliffs in the painting, in his opinion. But since other like towns nearby have claimed the bridge as their own, there's a bit of like friendly rivalry about like where the bridge actually is. And the town he identified was like, yes, like it's we're the one with the real bridge now. So
that's so funny. That's such a like such an innocuous thing to be like. Like, we're the Da Vinci Bridge place, not you guys. It's ours.
Yeah, well, some official was like, well, this other town has a poster up. I guess we'll get a poster like of our own. Yeah. Showing that we have the bridge. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if that's what your town is, that's what your town is. It's like Roswell, New Mexico. No one cared about Roswell until the alien things. And now there's like a ton of UFO like restaurants and.
Right. They leaned into it.
Right. Yeah. Because it's like, hey, you want people to visit your town. The extra cash flow is nice.
Right, exactly. So go see the real Mona Lisa bridge.
Yeah. And then, oh my God, I can see it now too. Just like the influx of selfies and stuff posted online of people like positioning themselves with the bridge in the background. I'm going to coin it now. It's the Mona Lisa challenge.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And if this blows up, I'm taking credit.
The painting itself, you can hardly see the bridge. Like when I was like, when I was writing this, I was like, oh, there's a bridge in the Mona Lisa? I didn't know. And then if you look at the painting, it's so small. Yeah. Yeah. It's tiny. You'd be like, oh, there it is back in the distance. So you could do that selfie challenge, but the bridge is going to be like very, very far behind you.
And also just not complete.
Yeah. That too.
Yeah. Yes. But I guess doing that, you could figure out where like he set up to paint the Mona Lisa as well. I guess so. I mean, I'm not sure if he painted it like at the site or what, but yeah, like where he like stood or how he looked at it. Yeah, because you could find the angle and like the positioning. That'd be kind of interesting too. That's what I would. I don't know if that's what this guy did or if he just kind of like looked at it. I would be interested to see like if somebody could figure out where Da Vinci stood or like got the angle for everything. It's kind of neat. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I know he used like drones to kind of get different angles of the bridge. So, yeah. I thought for a second, you meant Da Vinci. And I was like... he was way ahead of his time, so... I was like, look, I know he invented stuff, but you can't tell me... You can't just throw that in at the end. But then I was like, wait, right. Yeah, sorry, the other guy. The other guy, yes, the historian. The other guy. In modern times, he used the drones. Da Vinci did not have drones. That would be a big breaking news, yeah. No, this one, I wrote this one, so it's kind of fresh in my memory still, but this was really cool. This little girl in Norway was just like playing outside of her school and found what she thought was like a really neat looking rock and was like, hey, look at this rock I found. And then her teacher was like, someone looks off about that. And it turned out to be this ancient stone dagger from like the tail end of the Stone Age getting into the Iron Age. But it's not a dagger that would have been used for stabbing or hunting or anything. It was like more of a ritualistic kind of trophy dagger. Oh, interesting. Which was apparently very common at that point in time. A lot of people did that with like, this one was carved out of stone, but like early iron workers were doing it, I think, out of bronze. Because bronze you wouldn't have used bronze. Like they had iron. Iron was the metal they used for tools and stuff. Bronze would have been a little bit more like fragile, decorative. So yeah, they had a lot. It was like a big thing that you would make somebody a stone. Probably is like a grave like a thing to accompany them in the afterlife.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really interesting. It's I feel like this happens in Europe fairly often, but like in Israel a lot, that someone's going to stumbles on one of these like incredible finds, and then you turn it, to turn it into like the government or whatever agency needs to look at it. But
the interesting thing too about this, because it was in Norway, but they theorized that the dagger might have actually been created in Denmark and then come across the sea to Norway at some point.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't even like a Norwegian thing at the time, because they have historical evidence of that happening in Denmark and other regions, not so much in Norway.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
Little piece of the past.
Literally.
This is another one of your articles, but it's kind of a grisly but fascinating topic about how Egyptians might have used severed hands as like war trophies.
Yeah, I like this one. This one had so much more to it than I expected. Because there were like a lot of theories bouncing around about, they found this cache of hands buried in an ancient tomb.
Weird.
Very weird. And some people were like thinking that maybe they had cut them off of prisoners as a form of torture, but the people who found them after doing an analysis were like, no way, the cuts are way too clean. These were definitely taken post-mortem, because otherwise, like a person flailing you wouldn't be able to get this sort of a clean cut. Oh. And so, yeah, they think that it might have been that like after battles, they would take the hands of fallen enemies and present them to the pharaoh or to the general or to whoever was in charge of them at the time. And then, if I'm not mistaken, they also think this came from, it was called the Gold of Valor, or the Gold of Honor was the name of the ritual of taking these hands.
Oh, wow. And one of the hands they said they thought was maybe a woman's hand?
Yeah. Yes, Julia Gresky, the paleopathologist who analyzed these, said that the ring fingers on men tend to be longer than their index fingers, and then the opposite is usually true for women, which I didn't know that.
Okay, me neither.
Yeah, I'm like, so what was it? Ring fingers usually longer than the index finger? That mine is very slightly. Is your index finger slightly longer than your ring finger?
My ring finger? They seem to be like the same size.
Yeah, mine's like maybe a couple centimeters. Anyway, apparently one of the hands had a longer index finger, and so they think it might belong to a woman as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When I first saw this article, I was like, oh, like, I don't know if you watched like Game of Thrones or read the books, but like Jaime Lannister, they chop off his hand as not really torture, I guess, but just kind of being like, haha, we got him. Yeah.
This was also, they said it might have been a way for them just to keep track of how many enemies they killed. You just look at the number of hands, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to keep count.
I think there were also some like afterlife things with that as well. Like if you don't have a hand.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Huh. Wow. Yeah. Well, anyway, but those are some of our top news stories for last month, because May's almost over, and May was also an action-packed month for historical anniversaries.
Yeah, it was. These are some of my favorite historical anniversaries we've talked about yet. Starting May 2nd, 1933, the first known sighting of the Loch Ness Monster.
Yes, it's good. It's so the monster was sighted a couple weeks before, but it was reported on May 2nd by a local newspaper, and they said that this couple driving along saw a monster, which was an enormous animal rolling and plunging on the surface of the lake. Dun, 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 dun. And then all these sightings followed after that, not only in the lake, but also like on land near the lake. Oh, interesting. Yeah. I've never heard of anyone saying that they saw the Loch Ness Monster not in the lake. There were. I just read an article about this, which is coming out next month, I think. But people like this guy on his like motorbike says he saw it. I think someone in a car also says they saw it. It's a crazy story because there were before this sighting, there was like rumor of a monster in Loch Ness back to like the 1st century when the Romans arrived. And then there was like, even in like Christianity, there's like some saint who allegedly defended this guy against a water monster in Loch Ness. Yeah. So interesting. How do you feel about the Loch Ness Monster? Are you a Nessie believer? No, not really.
Me neither.
But I do think it is interesting because like when the Romans arrived, they found all these carvings. And they were all like animal carvings, but there was one animal that they couldn't identify. And it looks kind of like the Loch Ness Monster from what we think it looks like. So that's interesting.
I'm sure at one point in time there probably was something in the lake.
Perhaps.
There's definitely not today.
That we know of, yeah. Who knows?
I'm going to go on record. This is like... This seems like one of those things that I would believe in, that I'd be like diehard. I'm like, no, the Loch Ness Monster is not real.
I mean,
but the Jersey Devil.
Oh, it is true that, you know, there's that famous photo of the Loch Ness Monster, which is also a famous hoax. And
yes.
That's the best evidence. So that's fake. So.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you'd think something that big.
You would have noticed it a bit more.
Then you'd have noticed it. It's a lake.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, lakes are big. I'm not, you know. It's not a pond.
Yeah, but it's not like that big in terms of like what this monster would need to survive and everything.
Right. Yeah. It's not the ocean.
It's not the ocean. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, I'm sort of sad that we live in this age now where we have like cameras on us all the time, because it removes that mystery a little bit of, oh, this thing like could exist. No one's actually documented it before.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuff just used to be more fun.
Right.
I was just writing about earlier this week, the Beast of Bray Road.
Which I don't know that story.
They also call it the Wisconsin werewolf. It was just one of those, like, the first sighting was 1936, and then throughout the 80s, people kept saying they saw this werewolf-like beast on Bray Road in Wisconsin. And that, like, some woman wrote an entire book about it, and people were like, yeah, no, it, like, scratched up my car and, like, attacked me. And I just, like, that wasn't even that long ago, but I haven't heard any, like, modern-day, like, cryptid encounters.
Right, yeah. I guess there's the one, I can't remember if we talked about this last time or not. It's the Fresno Nightcrawler. Did I mention that last time?
Yeah. No, you didn't, but I know what they are.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I do.
I mean, that was pretty... This is a cryptid that looks like a pair of pants that's like walking by itself.
Yeah.
So like,
I guess that was caught on like security camera footage, allegedly.
Something was allegedly caught in Fresno and then at Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And people's theories about what it could be are like don't make any sense. Like they're like, it's a deer. It's like, how?
It's not how. It literally looks like a walking pair of pants.
It really does. Watching the video footage, you're like, weird.
Yeah.
It's very odd, but...
Oh, didn't someone theorize that it might have been an umbrella? Am I right in thinking that?
I could. I don't remember, but...
Because I remember seeing someone I don't remember if it was the Fresno Nightcrawler, but I want to say it was. Someone took like a video of an umbrella being like kind of blown in the wind, an open umbrella, and the way that the little pegs at the end of it kind of looked similar enough.
Interesting, huh?
So they were like, oh, maybe it was just two umbrellas. I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Maybe it's a mystery. So. Well, our next historical anniversary is less mysterious.
Right.
Yeah. It's that on May 14th, 1973, America's first space station lifted off. Skylab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not much else to say about it, but that's very cool.
It is cool. I was doing a little bit of reading about it, and it seems like there were some harrowing moments aboard Skylab during its time.
I could imagine, yeah.
Things like fell apart or stopped working, and the people living there had to like, I don't know, kind of scramble. Yeah. Which sounds really scary.
Yeah, that'd be a very scary, stressful situation. Like the first kind of more permanent fixture in the atmosphere. And you're like, guess we're testing this out.
Yeah. It's like being lost at sea, only like much worse. I mean, if something goes wrong.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. One of my worst nightmares, I guess. So.
What, being stranded in space?
Yeah. I think because I watched a lot of Star Trek as a kid. And so this happened every now and then. And it seems pretty awful. Yeah.
3 days later, Watergate trials began, or Watergate hearings, rather.
Yeah, this was a dramatic time to be an American. Lots of information came out about a lot of people, especially in the White House, and what they knew and what they didn't know. It was funny from what I've read, like in Europe at the time, they were like, what's the big deal? Like, so he spied, whatever. Because they thought Nixon was like kind of a good president in some ways.
I think he was, other than the Watergate thing, like well-liked and whatnot.
I don't think he was. I think he was pretty unpopular because of like Vietnam, and he was like hated for like other reasons. Things he'd done in his career. I don't know
much about Nixon.
Nixon's one of I wouldn't say he's my favorite president, but he's one I find the most fascinating because he was in politics for a long time. You know, he was a congressman, a senator, a vice president. So he had a lot of baggage. But the interesting thing about Watergate is that although he did participate in the cover-up, there's actually no evidence directly tying him to like giving an order to break in. And there's infamously like missing 18 minutes of tape missing from this set.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's nothing directly connecting him to it. And he was very disliked by a lot of people by that point in his career. So, but the Europeans liked him. He was doing good stuff with like the USSR.
Interesting.
Cooling tensions and whatnot. So, yeah.
Huh. How many was Clinton? Clinton was impeached for lying under oath, not for having an affair.
Right.
And then Andrew Johnson, now Donald Trump.
And now Donald Trump.
Twice.
Yeah. Twice. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but no one's actually been kicked out of office before. They've been impeached and then acquitted. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Nixon was pardoned, wasn't he?
He was. I mean, he was never impeached. He resigned from office.
Right.
And then Ford decided to pardon him, which for Ford, that was like, people were furious. But Ford thought, we're just going to close the door on this and move
not
forward.
waste any more time on it. There's other stuff to do.
Yeah. There's an interesting, I'm not sure I'll get this anecdote exactly right, but Ford knew he was going to get all this criticism about what he was doing. And so he walked around for like the rest of his life, or for a lot of his life, with this piece of paper in his pocket that said, it was a legal opinion, and it said that by accepting the pardon, it means that you're accepting like guilt. So he was like, so Nixon accepted this pardon, he's accepting his guilt. And for Ford, that was like, but it made him a pretty unpopular person.
Yeah. So. I didn't even think about that, but that is, that's kind of, if you didn't do anything wrong, you don't need to be pardoned.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Yeah. Very, very, I mean, it's a really Watergate's fascinating. I think it's so confusing that it's hard to kind of like sink your teeth into it. But what the ramifications of it were in terms of American politics, with Nixon leaving, Ford coming in, Ford being unpopular, Carter being elected, Carter being unpopular, Reagan being elected. Like, it's just like, there's so much stuff came out of this. Distrust in the United States and right. Yeah. Especially, before that, I don't think people really looked at the government as this kind of like oppressive or like antagonistic force. Yeah. I mean, I think there was like Vietnam. So like that was like growing, and Nixon was just like, it felt like a symptom of that too. It's like one more thing. And that's why people liked Carter, because he was like, I'm just a peanut farmer. And,
well, I actually wrote about this recently, too. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I had no idea, was inspired by Nixon.
Really?
Like the era of Nixon inspired that movie. It was partly that and partly the director wanting to mow through a crowded shopping center with a chainsaw around Christmas. But
wow,
also the Nixon thing.
I've never seen that movie.
I haven't either.
Whoa.
I've never seen it. I had to whisper so my girlfriend didn't hear me say that.
Wow.
Yeah, I've never seen any version of it, but
add that to your list alongside Titanic.
I still haven't seen Titanic.
It's so crazy. We're turning the clock back to 1883 for our next event on May 24th, which was the opening of the Brooklyn Bridge.
Woo!
Very exciting. Have you walked across it? You've been to New York before, so.
Yes, I did walk across it.
Nice.
Yeah, my girlfriend made it like a very big point when we went to New York that we had to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, it was cool. I think I have a video of it, or she took a video. One of us took a video of us walking across. But yeah, that was my first time in New York about a year ago now.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good bridge to walk across. At the time that it opened, it was the longest suspension bridge in the world. And it was called the Eighth Wonder of the World, which I'm not sure if it still is, but I'm guessing not. Yeah, it is a great bridge, though. Since we're speaking about presidents, I learned reading about this today that President Chester A. Arthur was there, as was the governor, Grover Cleveland, who would become president just 2 years later. Fun fact.
That's a big deal.
Grover Cleveland is the only president to have 2 non-consecutive terms in office.
Huh.
Yeah. He lost an election and then he came back, and that could happen again. Maybe in the future, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing about the Brooklyn Bridge is that it happens to connect to our cocktail du jour.
It does.
The Brooklyn.
The Brooklyn. All of those New York named cocktails are very similar. I'll do the recipe first, and then we can get into like the little fun fact about it.
Sure.
But if you're looking to make the Brooklyn at home, 2 ounces of rye whiskey, 1 ounce dry vermouth, 1/4 ounce of maraschino liqueur, 1/4 ounce of Amer-Picon, probably butchered the name of that, or just 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, which if you make cocktails, you probably have lying around. And then just a maraschino cherry to garnish it.
Yum.
Yeah, very similar to a Manhattan or an old-fashioned, yeah. But the story, little fun fact, this cocktail was not made in Brooklyn. The guy who made it was from New Jersey. He was working at a bar in Manhattan, decided to make his own cocktail, and then just so happened to be that the owner of the bar he worked at was a Brooklynite.
So he took
and so
over.
he named it the Brooklyn.
It's kind of funny this guy he's gonna make up a new cocktail, and so he made up a cocktail that's exactly like a Manhattan, except it's dry vermouth instead of sweet vermouth.
Yeah.
I mean, they're good, but it's not that creative.
Yeah, classic cocktail history is something I'm so fascinated by.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I know a lot of cocktails were made during like Prohibition.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was like the origin.
The Brooklyn first appears in print in Jacob A. Grohusko's 1908 Jack's Manual. And yeah, he lived in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Wow, 1908.
1908, so that's pre-Prohibition.
Yeah.
And it was clearly based off the Manhattan.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I assume so. I assume the Manhattan came first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's also the Bronx cocktail.
Oh, it's in the Bronx cocktail. And is there a Staten Island cocktail and a Queens cocktail as well?
A Bronx is gin, French vermouth, Ballard vermouth, twist of an orange peel, and then put it in a shaker with some ice.
Okay.
That was from when was that made? 1899.
Oh.
Wow.
Interesting.
Well, now I need to know when the Manhattan was made.
Yeah. Ugh, Manhattans are so good.
Oh, wait, here. Earliest known written mention of this classic drink was actually in an article in September 1882 by the Sunday Morning Herald.
Huh. I wonder what they were writing. If they were like, here's a new cocktail to try, or if it was just mentioned like he was drinking a Manhattan at a bar. And
Yeah, I'd be curious to read that article. I'm imagining that like old news voice like, hey, come on down. Check out this new cocktail. It's called the Manhattan.
I guess our final historical anniversary is a big one.
It is.
It's May 29th, 1953, when Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay climbed Mount Everest successfully.
Yeah.
Which you just wrote about.
Yeah, and you edited that one.
And I edited it, so we both know about it.
Yeah, this one's fresh in the head.
Yeah. It's a cool story, I think. I mean, obviously the big thing is like they did it, they made it to the top.
Right.
But they almost weren't the ones to do it.
Yeah, 2 other guys went up 2 days before and didn't make it because they were running low on oxygen, basically. They were like 300 feet or something from the top?
Yeah.
They're so close.
They're so close. And they had to turn around. And then they got their turn, Hillary and Norgay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it probably worked out better, though, because in this set, like Tenzing Norgay had been on Everest so many times prior, and he was a Sherpa, and
yeah, he's a pro.
There's something a little more poetic too about like him being one of the first 2 people to make it up there rather than like 2 British guys.
Right. Yeah. I thought it was really interesting, in the decades that followed, a lot of people wanted to know who was first, and neither of them would ever say who was first until much, much later. And then Norgay was like, listen, I wasn't like pushing Hillary out of the way to get to the top. Hillary got there first and I followed him, and then we stood there together, and that's what happened. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't really matter which of the 2 of them was first. Like, and they were like, you look at photos of the 2 of them and they just seem so chummy with each other.
Yeah, they seemed really happy.
Yeah. I mean, they apparently got along really well, which is why they were selected to go up together.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing feat. It's not something I would ever want to do, climb Mount Everest.
No. Oh, God, no.
Yeah. Not on my bucket list, but
I'll stick to bouldering.
Yeah, I'll stick close to the ground as possible.
Yeah, but no, yeah, that's a nice note to end on, though.
Yeah, high note. Yeah, you could say.
Literally.
That's our show. So
yeah, if you liked this, if you liked our chat here today, you can help us out by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and then follow the All That's Interesting and History Revealed pages on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Real History Uncovered. And if you want to kind of like dive deeper into any of these stories or just read the written version of what we talked about today, that's all going to be found on allthat'sinteresting.com.
Yeah, so check it out. We've got new stuff all the time, literally every single day.
Yep, that's the tagline. Something interesting to read every day.
Every day.
Guaranteed.